In the interview segment, the Director General of the Budget Office, Mr. Ben Akabueze, concludes his explanations on the details of the 2020 budget proposals. Let's throw in another issue that has refused to go away in spite of government's explanation at every stage, the debt profile of the country. At a point like this, do you think it's sustainable? Do you still share that view?
I believe that it is still sustainable, provided we do what we have to do with respect to revenues. When you look at all the other measures of debt sustainability, we come out pretty okay, except when you get to the debt service to revenue ratio. That's where we have great cause for concern. And we have evaluated it and come to the conclusion that the issue is not the level or the cost of the debt. The issue is our inadequate, grossly inadequate revenues. We have about the lowest revenue to GDP ratio in the whole world among countries. Simply, government isn't collecting enough revenues. Truth be told, as Nigerians, we're not simply not paying enough taxes, as happens in other countries. And before you hit me with the usual whatever, oh yes, in other, and I'm not talking about comparison with the countries of Europe and America. I'm talking about even on the continent, even in countries where which have worse infrastructure than Nigeria. Okay. The tax rates are still higher.
I'm glad you brought up the issue of infrastructure. This is an area that is of concern to the government. But let's look at the 2020 budget and see how it all fits into this. For instance, you have this figure here, 4.88 trillion naira, part of the recurrent component for the budget, to a debt service of 2.45 trillion naira. That balance is what is going for infrastructure development. Do you think that is adequate? Do you think that would make any mark? Would it scratch the surface?
The truth is, we need to be spending a lot more on infrastructure. That's one. But we can only provide to spend what we have. Okay, when you look at the recurrent expenditure, how much of it is discretionary? In that 4.8 trillion, it's only the overhead component of it, which is less than 10% of that amount, that is discretionary. The rest of it, we've got employees, we've got staff, and government has determined that at a time like this, given the current socio-economic situation, it's not a time to contemplate actions like retrenchment. So you have those employees, they've got to be paid. And despite whatever anybody says, public sector wages are still very low relative to what the private sector pays. And most public servants are really just struggling to meet. So it's not like you're paying high wages, so you need to cut down the level of the wages. But then you have the numbers. If you recall, the National Assembly, when we sent the medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper to them, they came back and they raised the benchmark oil price from 55 to 57, and they increased the projections for customs revenue by over 500 billion naira. And part of their consideration, as they stated, was that it was necessary to provide fully for the additional 30,000 employees that the security agents needed, that the security agents need to employ, and to make sure they're provided for in 2020. Truth be told, is we are like a country at war.
The capital expenditure, Mr. Akabueze, is not doing any better. 2.14 trillion, that's what's been proposed. What's your reaction to this figure?
This administration set itself a target to allocate a minimum of 30%. But for 2020, we're showing 24%. Okay, and that's not something we're eased about. However, having provided fully now for the recurrent expenditure. If there was to be any additional revenues, if, despite all of the reservations people have, if our revenues, come up better than provided, we will go for a supplementary budget, and that will be all focused on incremental capital expenditure. Additionally, there's significant capital expenditure that is not shown in the budget. If you look at the fiscal framework, you will see, for instance, there's provision in 2020 to, transfer $270 million to the Sovereign Wealth Fund, to the NSIA, as contribution towards the Presidential Infrastructure Development Fund, which there's $200 million our own counterparts spending on the Siemens, the power, the power project, which is designed to add some thousands of megawatts to our power. You will not see those in this in the budget here. Under the Road Trust Fund, a number of companies, including Dangote Flour Mills, have signed up to do some roads, to and in exchange for tax offsets in subsequent periods. You will not see those there. In this year's budget, you will not see the expenditure on, that the NSIA, the Sovereign Investment Authority, National Investment Authority, is on the second Niger Bridge. You will not see the expenditure on the Kanu-Abuja road, nor will you see that on the Mambila, Mambila hydropower project. These are projects that are being undertaken outside of the budget. So the budget doesn't tell the full story of the capital expenditure of the federal government.
Mr. President, while presenting that budget, says he hopes it is a budget that will create jobs and grow the economy. As an economist yourself, what are the indications that this is possible?
Well, first of all, the budget maintains an expansionary, stance, and therefore, that's the more money that you spend, okay, that then drives, economic activity. As people, there's more money in the hands of consumers, as including implementing the new minimum wage and consequential adjustments. And therefore, people demand, there's a higher demand. That means industry produces more, it makes more money, it invests more, and then creates jobs. The most dependable, the most sustainable way to take people out of poverty is to put them to work.
There is this other issue that looks pretty straightforward. You need to expand your tax net. But how do you explain to people who are going through difficult time that they need to pay more taxes? This is a task that the government has. What would you be telling Nigerians?
The good thing about what is being proposed now is contrary to the existing VAT Act, which sets no threshold for applicability. Okay, in essence, therefore, means that even the woman with her small store on the roadside is actually under the current law expected to charge, VAT. But the proposed bill now introduces a threshold. Only businesses that have turnover of 25 million naira and above will be required to register for VAT.
This is a very good place to say thank you very much for coming on Dateline Abuja.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Well, thank you very much for staying with us. Let's quickly go to your mails now, and I have this one from Leye Agbaman, who needs the attention of the FCT authorities. He says FCT Water Board have been supplying us with dirty brown water for the past 3 weeks, and he asks, what's going on? Thank you, Leye, although we would appreciate if you let us know what area of Abuja you're writing from. Perhaps the relevant authorities can know where to direct their efforts. You can be part of the program by sending your views and comments using the email address and Twitter handles on your screen. Also, be sure to share anything happening within your locality with us. You may watch any episode of the program on YouTube. For now, I'd like to say thank you once again for watching. I'm Ibrahim Adra, and it's bye for now.